Thank you for coming, everybody. My name is Kelly Gluckman. This is an ongoing series on various subjects pertaining to living with HIV. It's brought to you by brightbod.com. These presentations are not intended to be used as medical advice. I'm speaking from my personal experience only. We're silencing the microphones for about 20 to 25 minutes while I do my presentation. We'll open up the floor for questions afterwards. I highly recommend and encourage you to ask any questions. If you have like a pad of paper next to you, write down questions as we go, and I'll answer any and all that come up. So today I'm going to be talking about HIV medication. On the left, those are my medications. Complera, I used to be on Complera. My doctor switched me over to a different one, but I liked that picture. So just to give you like an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today, I'll talk a bit about my journey with HIV medication. I'm going to talk about access to HIV medication, the different government programs, the services available on these programs. I'm going to be talking about the history of medication and how it's evolved. We're going to be talking about what they do, advances in medications, and where we're at today, and the C word, which is cure. So this is me. My name is Kelly Gluckman. I represent the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation. I have been HIV positive for 6 years. The survival guide that you see on the left is something I did for A&U magazine, Art and Understanding magazine. You can read like the couple quotes here. I've chosen to look at my journey with HIV as a blessing in disguise. I'm able to do this in huge part because of Elizabeth Taylor's undying efforts and activism very early on in the epidemic. I look up to her as a role model. Her courage and compassion inspire me every single day. I feel honored to be able to keep her spirit alive through my work in the fight. Elizabeth Taylor is absolutely amazing. I may talk about her another time, but so this is me now. And I don't want you to forget that I'm human, so just remember that that's me too. That's a really good representation about how I felt when I was first diagnosed with HIV. When I was first diagnosed, I did not want to go on medication. I had a huge amount of distrust in the government, in the pharmaceutical industry. I thought that the medication companies were just trying to keep me alive long enough so that I can keep paying for medication and to keep me just sick enough that I keep needing them. I was also reading about the side effects and how horrible they were, and I was scared about how much money it might cost me. I was scared about the side effects. There were long-term side effects and short-term side effects, and I was just very, very reluctant. It took me about 10 months from my original diagnosis to start medications. Every 3 months I get my blood drawn and they tell me where I'm at, how much of the virus is in my system versus how many T cells I have. And I got 3 of these tests, and it took for the virus to triple in my body. It went from 25,000 copies to 75,000 copies per microliter of blood. And when that happened, that was when I was like, oh, door closed. That was when I was like, okay, like, fine. So I started medication, and I found out very quickly that medications these days are much better than they used to be. And so that's kind of where I am today. I take my medication just like prescribed, but it took me a long time to become comfortable with doing that. So let's talk about access to HIV medication, because when you're first diagnosed, that's kind of like the first Mount Everest that's in your face. Like, well, what do I do now? How do I get on medication? So I say this all the time. Google is your friend. Google is your best friend. I'm guessing because you're here, you have access to a computer, which is great. Use the internet as much as you can. Type into Google, the first thing you want to do is type in AIDS service organization and then your city. And then call the different AIDS service organizations around you and get yourself an appointment. It's not difficult to get in, and most metropolitan area, well, all metropolitan areas in the U.S. have AIDS service organizations, and I'm sure the rural areas do too. But there should be an AIDS service organization around you somewhere. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resources Emergency Act. So it's the Ryan White program. Ryan White was a young kid. He was a hemophiliac, and he was diagnosed with HIV, I believe I think it was 84, he was diagnosed with HIV. And they gave him like 6 months to live, and he ended up living about 5 more years than they told him he was going to. And when he tried to go back to school, he faced a lot of discrimination from the school and from his peers, and his mom became an activist and an advocate, and she wanted him to live a normal life. And so eventually he passed away, but he was very, very brave in his fight, and like there was a ton of press and advocacy in his name. So they came up with a piece of legislation named after him. And underneath the Ryan White Act, which was started in 1990, just a few months after he passed away, there was $2.32 billion allocated in 2016. So that's just the money in the federal budget that was allocated to go toward the services provided by the Ryan White Act. The majority of the funds for this act is to support primary medical care and essential support services for people living with HIV. So they'll cover your doctor's visits, they'll cover medications, they'll cover dental appointments. You're going to want to go to hrsa.gov in order to find more information. And I actually have it open on my computer. It's this website right here. And so if you go down, you'll see HIV AIDS and Ryan White. You click it and go to the About Ryan White program. Did I just click it and it led me to the same exact place? Legislation. There we go. So you'll find a ton of information about the Ryan White Act. I was on this page earlier that broke it down really well about the Ryan White. Okay, there we go. So there's 4 parts. You see on the right-hand side, Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, and then the AIDS Drug Assistance Program right here. That tells you exactly what's covered under the different sections of this piece of legislation. So you'll see, where is it? Part A. I'll go into Part A and then I'll go back to. So Part A of Ryan White HIV AIDS program provides assistance to eligible metropolitan areas and transitional grant areas that are most severely impacted by the HIV and AIDS epidemic. And then you see all of these areas down here where it's covered or where they use the funds. And so this is just a really great website to go to get information about exactly what's covered. And then the AIDS service organization that you go to for care is going to know a lot about this as well. Okay. So there's also something called the Housing Opportunities for Persons Living with HIV and AIDS. That provides housing assistance and supportive services for low-income persons living with HIV, AIDS, and their family. So not all cities have HOPWA. I know New York City does. One of my friends is HIV positive living in New York City. Her rent is completely covered. All of her utilities are covered. So in order to get more information about this, a lot of people living with HIV do not know that this exists. This is an excellent resource to get yourself back on your feet after a diagnosis. Diagnosis is really hard. And so if you have Hapwa in your city, take advantage of it. Type into Google Hapwa in your city, and you can find information. Also, the AIDS service organization that you go to should have information about that too. All right. And also, just to talk a little bit more about the Ryan White program, that is on a sliding scale depending on your income. So if you're not making very much money at all, it could be free. And it kind of just scales up depending on how much money you make. I don't pay anything. I'm a student at UCLA, so I'm really, really lucky to get my care for free. Also, let's talk about politics a little bit. Okay, so the ACA covers a lot of HIV and AIDS services right now. They switched from part of the Ryan White Act to the ACA when Obamacare took over. But now that it might be repealed, I just want to kind of calm anyone's fears, because the Ryan White Act should come back into place. And there's a lot of very wealthy, very powerful people who have a lot of stake and a lot of emotional attachment to this. So I'm not super worried, but I do this every week, and if I find something out, I will update you in the weeks to come with our current administration. So I wouldn't worry too much, but yeah, just keep your eyes out for that. So let's go through the history of medication and how far we've come. 1981 was when the first cases started appearing. There were, hold on, there's a picture in the way of, anyways, so that's when the first cases started appearing. People were dying of rare infections, and nobody knew what was going on. It was all gay men who were dying at the time, so that's when gay cancer came around. Everybody started associating what was going on with the homosexual population or the gay community. In 1986, President Reagan finally addressed the AIDS crisis for the first time. Before this, he had been urged to address it, but he wasn't saying anything. He had a lot of moral issues with the population that was being impacted by this, and it took a long time to get him to address it. By the time he said it out loud in public for the first time, over 16,000 people had died already. In 1986 also, AZT is approved by the FDA for use with AIDS patients. AZT, so these are some of the images that go along with AZT. The one on the right is graphic, but it speaks to how toxic AZT was. It was originally used to treat patients with cancer, but when they found out how toxic it was, they put it back on the shelf because the medications themselves were hurting people. But then AIDS came around, and they were like, let's see if it works for them. And they took it back out and started using it. And then this happened in 1991, Magic Johnson, and this kind of shook the world, because before him, it was a gay thing, and Magic Johnson was everyone's hero, and they were like, wait a minute, if he can get it, like, what's going on? And because he came out so publicly, Magic Johnson started doing a lot of advocacy himself, and research started amping up to find a cure for this, because once the public view of this changed, it was like, oh wow, this can happen to anybody. That's actually not how the public thought, but it just he sparked a lot more research about medications. So in 1995, everything changed. The first HIV drugs in the classes of nucleoside reverse transcriptase and protease inhibitors came out. and those proved to be very effective. So here's a little chart. I used it last week also. So this is the replication process of HIV. You see on the top left-hand side, HIV attaches to the cell and then uses the cell's DNA to replicate itself. But those little red X's are the medications and where they stop the replication from happening. So in 1995, when all this came out, people were living for longer. So the red line is the people living with HIV. The blue line is the deaths that were happening. And you see on the bottom are the years. And then when you get to 1995, the deaths dropped off. And the people living with HIV started increasing just because less people were dying. There were also, more infections, but just less people were dying because the medications are now effective in keeping people alive. So from here, the medical community focused more on improving upon the medications than they were finding a cure. And I'll talk about the cure and why it's so difficult to cure this a little bit later. So you see this chart. This is a little bit dated. It's like a couple years dated, but you see all of these medications are available for treating HIV. You don't necessarily need all these medications. Some of these pills have more than one medication in them. If you look at the little peach area, those pills are one pill cocktails. So the people who take those medications only need one pill a day. The other ones they vary. So this is a pretty good visualization of where we're at as far as medication is concerned. So while you're on medication, HIV cannot replicate, so it hides. It hides in your brain and it hides in your gut. And I wanted to find like a unisex anatomy picture, but this was the most clear I could find. So there we go. It's a female, but this is for females and males, obviously. So HIV lays dormant until there's an opportunity to repopulate your blood system. In 2008, Timothy Brown, also known as the Berlin patient, was pronounced cured. This shook the HIV research and medical community quite a bit, and I'll explain exactly what happened with him. So he got HIV in 1995. He was on medications and he developed leukemia, which was not HIV related. So what they did was they did a bone marrow stem cell transplant from someone who is immune to HIV. So less than 1% of the population is what's called immune to getting HIV, which means that they don't have the CCR5 receptors in order to accept the HIV onto it. So if you see the little arrow, that's where the HIV enters the T cell. So if you don't have that CCR5 receptor, then, HIV just kind of plays bumper cars until it dies because it doesn't have a host to latch onto. So they did this twice. They did a bone marrow transplant and then the leukemia came back and they did another bone marrow transplant. But, before they do the transplant, they have to put him through chemo and radiation and completely kill his immune system. So they had to do that 2 times. And, for some reason, like someone got the smart idea to be like, hey, like, why don't we try a bone marrow transplant from someone who doesn't have this receptor? Let's see what happens. And he ended up being cured. The new T cells from the stem cell bone marrow transplant repopulated his immune system. And so now not only is he cured, but he can't get HIV ever again because now he's immune to it. I just want to remind you that there is no cure for HIV and AIDS. I cannot stress this enough. The more people you talk to, the more you open up to people about this, you're gonna get people telling you that there's a cure, or that this treatment or this naturopathic treatment is good for HIV. I can't even tell you how many people have told me that there's a cure for HIV. There's no cure. Timothy Brown is the only known person to be cured of HIV so far. His case sparked a revival in cure research. What they did to him is incredibly painful, it's incredibly risky, and it's not easily replicated. Right now, they are researching gene therapy, and they're trying to find a way to take what happened with Timothy Brown and find out a way to do it that's replicable in like a mass way. But they're not quite there yet. I think it'll happen in my lifetime, but I don't really put any of my eggs in the cure basket. I don't recommend you hang on the idea of a cure. I don't like to sugarcoat things. It's not, living with HIV is difficult, but it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is. The medications are very palatable. They don't have the side effects that I thought they were going to. And you can live very, very well with HIV. So learn to live with HIV, and if a cure comes, it will be a delightful turn in your life rather than like the thing you were so desperately needing for so long. The only way to effectively treat HIV is to get under the proper care of a doctor. Take your medication he or she gives you as prescribed. I'm going to talk about why it's so difficult to cure HIV now. All right, so although most copies of HIV are, I have a picture covering the words on the right. What's the word that I totally just typed not too long ago? You can read it. 1% of your HIV will have natural mutations. For being a very simple organism, HIV is very intelligent. Hey. Oh, you wanted to alert me of the time. Okay. All right. If you do not take your medications as prescribed, your HIV virus will mutate and they'll become resistant to your medications. So those are the little mutated HIV cells. This is why HIV is so difficult to cure. It's very intelligent. It mutates very quickly. Do not believe anyone who tells you that there is a cure for HIV. My favorite sites to get medically accurate information about HIV and AIDS are AIDS.gov, PAWS.com. My favorite sites for community information and op-ed articles, the Well Project and The Body. Those are very female specific, but men can get some good information there too. Forums.paws.com. Those are online forums for the HIV community. It's great. HIVequal.org, HIVplusmag.com. Those have great op-ed articles and great information too. And greaterthan.org is greater than AIDS, which is like an HIV advocacy campaign. All right, so this is me. You can find me on any of these platforms. On Facebook, you're going to want to find the profile with that as the profile picture. That's my public profile page. You can message that. You can follow that. I'm going to post more on that page. But the other page is my personal page, and I don't add people who I don't know personally. But you can get a hold of me through that profile, which is my public profile. And now I'll open it up to questions. I know I went a little bit long, but I get nerdy about medications.
If someone who has HIV is apprehensive for some reason about taking the medication, maybe they don't have health insurance, for instance, Maybe they're concerned that the medications are going to be expensive. What would you tell them to convince them to do it? And what are some reasons? So that's the first question. The second question is, what are some reasons people use not to get on medication?
Um, so, I mean, as I said when I was talking about the Ryan White program, the the government subsidizes HIV and AIDS medications. They are very inexpensive, for the most part. The the reasons why people don't get on medications is because they don't want to take a pill every day. If you don't get on medication, you're going to get AIDS and you're going to die. I don't sugarcoat things. HIV causes AIDS, and you can live for 5 to 7 years with AIDS, and then you're going to die. Like, you need to get yourself to a doctor. And then they will take your blood, and they will advise you on which medications you're going to take and how quickly you need to get on them, which is most likely going to be as soon as possible. The medications do not have terrible side effects. They don't. If you catch your HIV infection quickly, then you can start taking medication soon, and you're not going to have complications. There was another part of your question. Did I answer it?
If they don't have money, and you say to go to a doctor, they might be concerned, well, how am I going to pay for the doctor? I think at the beginning you said Ryan White, but just could you speak a little bit more about how Ryan White or how other organizations could help someone without health insurance get to the doctor or pay for the doctor?
When you contact an AIDS service organization, what's going to happen is they are going to schedule you an appointment for a financial screening. You bring in your latest paychecks or last year's tax return and your identification, and they will sign you up for ADAP, which is the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, which is covered under the Ryan White Act. So they will walk you through that process of getting into medical insurance. Essentially, Ryan White and the AIDS Drug Assistance Program is insurance. It is insurance. And then Medicare is like an overarching insurance provider as well. Medicare is federally funded. And, we'll see what's going to happen with that. As it stands right now, if you get yourself into an AIDS service organization, they will walk you through the process of getting into medical care. And they will talk to you about financial stuff. I don't know anyone's financial standing. I don't know how much money anybody makes, but it's not as expensive as people think it is. Did that answer the question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay. Kelly, I have a question. Not to be argumentative or anything like that, but don't you think it's a pessimistic view to say that it would not happen again if it happened with Mr.
Timothy Brown?
With Mr. Brown, with Timothy Brown? Don't
Mm-hmm.
you think that it can happen again?
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is there is no cure right now. A cure as it stands on January 31st, 2017, as of today, there is no cure for HIV. There's one person who's been cured. There is a lot of research going on about a cure. I think it's going to happen in my lifetime. I'm not saying that there will never be a cure. I absolutely think there's going to be a cure. It just doesn't exist right now. There will be people, or there have been people who have come to me to tell me that there's a cure and that they have information about it. But as far as the scientific community is concerned, it doesn't exist as of right now. So I, 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 I don't feel like I'm pessimistic about it. I feel like I'm realistic about it. Well, I want to encourage people to learn to live with this, and be happy regardless, because it's possible. So that's where I'm sorry if I came off as pessimistic. I didn't mean to. I just want to be. It makes me so mad when people tell me that there's a cure for HIV. It just drives me nuts. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Another thing, going back to insurances, the Affordable Care Act, does that insurance state covers most of the meds or just a partial medication for AIDS patients?
It depends on your income. I'm a student. I make like $25,000 a year, which is not that much money. But with my income, my medications are free. So so my medications are 100% covered. As I make more money, they'll start covering less. I don't know about income, but it's on a sliding scale. So you know what? I can look that up. I can look that up right now.
So then, as your earnings increase, then you find then that you may have then to a deductible, a larger deductible or something like that towards your medication.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, the government subsidizes the medications through the Ryan White Care Act.
Okay.
And
yeah,
so I'm covered 100%. As I make more money, I'll have to pay more.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that answer for you.
So Kelly, your medications are covered 100%. What about your doctor visits, your labs, and so forth?
My I get my care for free, all of it. My doctor's visits, my medication. When I was first diagnosed, I got 26 therapy sessions, like psychotherapy, a therapist for free. So it was 26 sessions. Yeah, and it was all covered under Ryan White and the ACA.
Kelly,
Yes.
are there situations that you know of that maybe people develop resistance to a certain drug or a certain type of drug and they have to move to another drug, or
that happens if you don't take your medication as prescribed. If you miss too many pills, the virus will mutate and then become resistant to medications. So as long as you're taking I take 1 pill a day every day with a meal. As long as I take it around the same time every day, then I should be totally fine. I've missed a pill here and there, like maybe like one every 3 or 4 months, and it hasn't affected me. If you're missing a pill like a week, or if you miss 2 pills this week and a pill that week, then you're going to run into some trouble. But my first year or two, I had an alarm on my phone that went off at the same time every day to remind me to take my pills. And over time, it's become routine. It's become just like, oh, yeah, I ate lunch, it's time to take my pill. So if you're off by a couple hours, it's not a big deal. If you're off by 6 hours, it's not a huge deal. But you want to take it as prescribed.
okay.
So you have never came across anyone whereby the medication they have been allergic to any of the medications that was prescribed for them?
Um, I haven't talked to anybody who's
okay.
allergic. No, I mean, I think it could exist.
Mhm.
I'm not 100% sure. You know, I'm not a doctor, but you know, the doctor will ask you about your allergies. So here, I'll go back to this. Like if you see this chart, there's so many medications. Like the doctor's gonna be able to find a medicine that's right for you, based on which HIV strain you have, and your medical needs as far as allergies and all of that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Just a moment, please, while I get everything together. You said that if you miss too many pills, the virus could mutate. So is mutation always a bad thing? I mean, are there ever situations in which the virus mutates, but it becomes less deadly form of the virus?
I don't think so. No, if in HIV, if HIV is going to mutate, it's going to become smarter. It's opportunistic. So if you miss a couple of pills and it has the opportunity to mutate, it's going to develop a mutation that's resistant to the medication that you're taking. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I understand that it's more convenient to stay on the same regimen. But hypothetically, if it were to mutate, and then a different medication would become necessary, perhaps, because it's mutated. I was just wondering if that could ever be a better situation than the former situation, but I guess not.
I mean, once it mutates, you are never able to take the previous medication again because it's no longer useful. So it kind of forces you into a new regimen. Your new regimen is probably going to be just as effective as the old regimen, but it's possible that it's going to be difficult to find a new regimen that's as effective. You don't want to go through developing drug resistance. Yeah, it's not a good time.
Thank you.
Right. If there are no more questions, then I hear somebody. Hello?
I mean, George, you have an excuse. You have back issues. I know it makes things difficult.
I'm sorry? I think he was talking to someone else. Are there any more questions? I think we're good, yeah? How do I stop sharing? Stop video, pause share, stop sharing. All right, so I want to thank everybody for coming. I will be back next week at the same time. I haven't decided what subject I'm going to be talking about next week. But yeah, thank you so much for your questions and your time, and I hope I helped in some way. So yeah, have a great day, everybody.